Hello and welcome to Think About It. I'm Sylvia Henderson, your host, and I invite you to tune in, take what you see and hear, and, well, think about it. Now, we have come out of 3 years of being at home or not being in the workplace, and we've gotten used to being with ourselves or being with family members or one or two people who are used to us. And now, at least as of this taping, now we're coming back into the workplace. We don't know how to deal with that. We don't know how to get along with people. We don't know how to communicate anymore. And so that's what this program is about today. In fact, I called it, How Do We Just Get Along Again? And so my guest is Valerie Jackson of Fierce Focus Strategies. And Valerie is a communications and personality expert. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Valerie, welcome to Think About It.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thanks for having me.
And what I ask everybody, the first question, instead of me giving an introduction, I think people like to hear the story of how you got to do what you do. So what makes you an expert? And how'd you get to be that?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you the quick, short history of how I got here. Is I had a background in aerospace engineering, and that's where I started. I was very different from everyone else I worked with. And
so it is
that.
like rocket science.
It is, right? But I was so different from everyone else, and I just figured, big deal. I kind of took note. And then I got into a business as a real estate broker. And I started taking note of people's personalities. And let me tell you, if there's anything that takes a gentle, I called it having the velvet hammer of helping people move along with their decision making, it's being in a business like that where it's a high trust industry. And so I learned that you had to figure out people are different. Why are they different? How are they different? How many differences are there?
Whoa.
And that's how I got into really looking at personality type and understanding, and then getting to understand my own son. Yeah, and we're different.
I would imagine. Oh, that's another whole detour, but thinking about twins and how they're the same but different. And yeah. So as I was saying in the introduction, as we're coming back into the workplace, now suddenly we have the moldy food in the refrigerator, in the break room that we have to deal with, people talking too loud in the next cubicle, or they're playing their music, interruptions, and whether you can deal with them or not. Oh, the temperature's too hot? Nope, temperature's too cold. So all of this stuff is now happening again back in the workplace. So since you focus on or talk a lot about communication, let's hit that first. How can we figure out how to get along again and communicate with the people we have to work with?
Well, let's start at home.
Oh.
Okay, let's not assume that we were getting along with the people we were locked down with, okay? So that's where the conversation would start.
Okay.
We're all so different. Communication is not just saying something. True communication is sending a message, having that message received, and having it understood.
Okay.
And that's the part we often miss. We feel like I said it, you heard it, we're good. Not the case. So often not the case. So understanding and bridging that gap of how do we get along is first starting out with who you are and understanding how you're wired. You have to have a point of origin. So I look at it like this. If you've ever gone to a mall, well, maybe that's just where I am most of the time.
I think most people have been there somewhere along the line.
So let's say you go into the shopping mall, you have a task. You're looking to do one thing. You want to get to whatever the store is to buy your pair of shoes. You want to get in, you want to get out. But you're not familiar with the mall.
Okay.
What's the first thing you do when you walk in?
Well, it depends on who you are.
Right.
I look for the directory.
There you go.
Okay.
You look for the directory. And okay, here's where I want to go. I want to go to this store. I know they have my shoes. The next thing you look for, the next point of reference is, where am I?
Okay.
Because if you don't understand where you're starting from, that directory is not going to help you.
Okay.
You're going to be turned around. You're going to be 90 degrees off from where you're trying to get to. So starting off with understanding who you are, that point of origin, and then here's where I want to go.
As you were talking about the mall, what is the first thing I do? I guess this goes into personality types. I've been with other people they walk in the mall and they go, well, let's just walk up and down. Let's just walk up and down the aisles to find the store. And I'm like, there's a directory right there.
Right.
Let's go look at the directory, see the dot that says you are here.
Right.
So I guess that goes to personality types.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So like I said, I was trying to also understand my son. So my son was the person who said, I just want to go in and I want to come out.
Hunter-gatherer. Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm an explorer. I walk the whole mall. I want to take everything in and then decide where it is I want to spend my time. I'll go back through. So personality types, different preferences.
So it's not true then. People, you hear, oh, well, women like to go and look and shop and wander around and window shop, and the men just want to just kind of go in and get it and come out. But I'm thinking, I don't particularly like window shopping. I want to go in, get what I came there for, and come out too. So it's not a male-female thing for those that say that. Sounds like it's a personality thing.
It really is a personality
or a
thing.
behavioral thing. So what's the difference then? Behavioral or personality?
So behavior is more of what other people see about you. It's what's received. Personality type is based on your preferences. It's how you convey it. And they're different.
And in the workplace, anybody that's been well, that's hard to say after 3 years of COVID pandemic, because a lot of people haven't been in the workplace ever until the end of the pandemic. But typically, we've seen assessments of many, many types. And I'll ask you a little bit about that too. On a day-to-day basis, if I just met you, I wouldn't sit down and say, okay, Valerie, take this assessment. Let me see what you are so that I know, who you are and how to talk to you and all of that. How do we assess, instantly, that we've got somebody who's different from us and we should adjust to that?
So I would say always assume you have someone different than you. Because even if there are similarities, there's going to be some dynamics within that.
Okay.
But it all starts again with really understanding who you are, and then you can recognize those similarities or differences. There are, like you said, tons of assessments. And trust me, I've taken them all. And here's the interesting thing. I always turn out to be the same person. No matter what assessment it is. I've been, a wind, a fire, a 347, a lion. I've done it all. And they're a good place to start.
Okay.
But without making an assessment live and understanding how to use it, it's really not useful.
And I like how you say it starts from at home too. Just my partner and I once I understood what made me crazy about the other person, it was like, okay, I can see she's in this category and I'm here, and so now I understand why the way we communicate sometimes, as I say, we both speak English, but man, it doesn't seem to be the same language sometimes.
Not at all. Well, again, like with me and my son. So I am, and I don't want to get too far ahead in our conversation, but I have the preference that I love being out amongst people. And I really could not understand why anyone wouldn't enjoy that. My son didn't. He's nice. He enjoys being in a smaller group when he wants to be. And so I kept thinking it was something that I would just draw out of him. And it was making him absolutely nuts. And so understanding that that's just not his preference. And the thing about preferences, really understanding it, is that neither of them are wrong. There are no better or worse types. I have people tell me, gosh, I wish I was this type or that type. We're designed, my belief is we're designed as we are to fulfill our purpose. And our design is in alignment with that. So trying to change who we are is not what we should be doing. We do need to be able to flex, to understand other people. And then there are parts of our preferences and personalities that we can develop.
So I'm holding off on asking you to define these personalities. We're going to get to that in the next half. But wouldn't there be the right personality for a specific job or a specific career?
Oh, now you've hit a hot button with me.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking, well, I mean, so I know I'm categorizing, especially you accountants. If you're an accountant out there and you're watching this, I'm sorry, but I'm going to categorize you as more of the numbers, kind of not people person. And I know that there are accountants who are people.
Yes, yes.
So I'll just stop, I'll admit right there. But I'm thinking, if you're in an accounting field and you're a people person and love to be out there, maybe you're kind of miserable sitting behind that desk.
Right.
Okay.
So, so that's where you have to understand, again, yourself. I'm the people person and I was the engineer.
Okay.
And very different from, like I said, a lot of the people that I worked with. And I wish I had had the understanding of that then. So rather than feeling like, I've landed in the wrong place.
Okay.
Maybe I would have given myself some more grace and a little more time to accept that it's just different. I just look at it differently. It's okay.
Okay.
But to answer your question about, doing the assessments for certain positions, there are a lot of companies that rely on those. And I'm not going to say that's a mistake, but here's where you have to be careful. If you're so rigid, and I know of some in particular that I've worked with that are looking for this particular personality type within this type of assessment, and in order to get that job, it has to match. And if it deviates, that person does not get that position. Well, the sad part about it is that they're missing out on some great talent.
Okay.
Things can be developed. People can develop. And when you take assessments, especially in a work environment, it often doesn't even represent who you really are.
Is that because typically we answer the way we think we should?
Absolutely.
Ah.
Yes. And when we talk about personality types more specifically in the next segment, I'll give you some examples of where that shows up almost every time on a work assessment.
There's something, we're about to take a break. There's something I've always found interesting. So I speak professionally. We speak professionally on stage. And we belong to an organization of speakers. And I've learned over the years that person you see on stage who you think is outgoing and dynamic and they've got control, many speakers I know say they're introverts, and we'll talk about that.
Yes.
But they say that that's not their natural way of being. They've learned to be that way.
Speakers, a lot of comedians, and a lot of people in the acting field. Definitely have preferences for introversion.
All right, so we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you as you bring our colorful stories to the world.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Hello, welcome back to Think About It. I'm still Sylvia Henderson, your host, and we are still talking about personality types and communicating and how do we just get along when we're with each other. And my guest is still Valerie Jackson, Fierce Focus Strategies. So I kept holding off asking you to go deeper and get into what are these personality types. And I hear more different definitions. It can be I can't think of what DISC is called, a directive, and you can be, assertive, and you mentioned you can be a lion, and it can be a ESTJ and all of that stuff. So what is all the, what are all these categories?
And how do we use them,
Yeah,
right?
how do we use them?
So I'm going to define the personality types and preferences based on the Myers-Briggs.
Okay.
I'm a Myers-Briggs certified practitioner, and quick little story, I took the certification to prove that it didn't work. Well, by the first break, I found out I was wrong. So the Myers-Briggs is such a rich assessment, such a rich methodology of understanding personality type, and it just keeps going deeper and deeper. I've been certified since 2014, and every year I learn more and more about it. So let me describe, it's based on 4 dichotomies or 4 pairs of opposites. And let me just side note, Myers and Briggs are women. A lot of people don't know that. They're a mother-daughter team. Yeah, I always like to throw that in. Yay, right? All right. So these 4 dichotomies tell us how we're wired and how we show up, and they're based on preferences. We all have parts of all of them.
Okay.
But there's somewhere that we prefer to be. There are 4 dichotomies that end up being 16 different types.
Okay.
And I tell people to think of it like a house with 16 rooms. You can live, you own the whole house. You can live in any of them, any of the rooms. But one of those rooms has all your stuff in it. It's where you like to hang out.
Cool.
Yes, so that's why I describe it. So here are the 4 types, or the 4 pairs of opposites. The first one is the one that a lot of people think they're familiar with, which is introversion or extroversion. That's really based on where you get your energy, not how much you talk. So I describe it this way. A person who has a preference for introversion, if you think of them as being a balloon, when they wake up in the morning, their balloon is full and they're ready to go. And with every interaction, that balloon gets depleted a little more, a little more. And sometimes not even by the end of the day. Sometimes it's by midday. Yeah. They're depleted and they need to get away and fill up again.
Cool.
A person who has a preference for extroversion starts their day as a balloon that's empty. And then they stop and get coffee and they get a little bit of air. And then they have a meeting and there's a little more air. And then they're working and on the phone with someone else and there's a little more air. And by the time their workday is over, they're ready for happy hour. It's like, let's go hang out some more. So that's the introversion, extroversion dichotomy. The next one is sensing or intuition. And it's where you get your information and what kind of information you trust. And this is important because this is how we make our decisions. So the person who has a preference for sensing, trust data. They're looking at what used to be and what can we count on? What do we know? The person who has a preference for introversion is looking at intuition, thank you, is they're looking at what are the possibilities? What else is out there? What can we explore? And they trust their gut. So there's the data and what do we know, and the gut and what can we find out? Then there's thinking or feeling, which is the 3rd pair of opposites. The person who has a preference for thinking likes the rules evenly applied. They're looking at principles, they're looking at logic. Whereas the person who has a preference for feeling, they're looking for a more harmonious situation.
Okay.
They're concerned with how the rules affect the people.
Okay.
And then there's the last pair of opposites, which is judging or perceiving. And I always like to point out that does not mean you're judgmental or perceptive. It's how you orient yourself to the outside world. So the person who has a preference for judging tends to like schedules. They want to know what's coming up. They're usually very timely and they do things in a succinct order. Where the person who has a preference for perceiving tends to be more flexible. They're often the people that are good at a crisis because they can do many things and see a lot of stuff all at once. It's like I can kind of a bird's eye view. They're good with last minute changes. And if you want to see them just spiral off, ask them what they're doing 6 months from now.
Okay. So actually some of that made more sense than what I've read before.
Good.
So I do know that with this Myers-Briggs, we end up with 4 letters. So we end up with one of each of those pairs.
Yes, you're going to end up with a letter that represents where you get your energy, where you get your information and what kind of information you trust, how you make your decisions, and then how you orient yourself to the outside world.
So without getting too geeky into this, what I'm hearing is, so if I'm, whether this is at home or whether this is at work, if I learned, whether it's through experience or whether you've taken the assessment, that you react differently or you need different situation or you think differently from me, I need to understand you so that I can be flexible enough to adjust to what you might need, even though it's not natural for me.
Absolutely.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
I'm like hesitating and what
right.
I meant, so.
It takes work, it takes practice, but mostly it takes awareness. So I did a training a few weeks ago, and it was a group of educators. And in this group, there was the one gentleman who was in charge of everyone else. And his preference, and we used a different assessment, but clearly he's a processor. And so then you had the people who report to him that would ask him for answers to questions. And they wanted them right away. We were able to come to an understanding within that meeting that it's not that he's delaying the answer. He needs to process it and bring in enough information to know that he's making a good decision. And so when you're looking at people in the workplace, having that kind of understanding really does bridge a lot of gaps, and it cuts down on a lot of conflict because you understand why the person is reacting the way they are.
Okay. I'm picturing are you the one that gets a box, opens it up, and pulls all the stuff out and start putting it together? Or are you the person that opens that box and there's the directions, and then we lay out all the parts first, and then we make sure we've got, which just in my delivery, you can almost tell which one I am, which one makes me crazy.
Right. I'm going to tell you, I think directions are for people who are lost. I figure that's why they put the picture on the box. That's enough. Just put the darn thing together.
You see, but you're an engineer.
Yes.
And I have good spatial orientation, so I can look at stuff and go, this looks like this goes here and here. You're probably the same.
I'm the same.
Whereas the partner who is not is like, no, let's check out the stuff first.
Right.
So I can see, and it was in learning that's the difference.
Yes.
That then keeps me from going, being crazy. And I know I shouldn't say going crazy because people who work in the psychological field don't like you to use that term. But
it feels that way sometimes. But see, here's the thing, though. Then you understand, right? Because neither is wrong.
Yeah.
So maybe what needs to happen is you let the partner open the box first. Go through all the inventory, look at the directions, and when they're comfortable and have done their due diligence, then you can come in and put it together, right? Keeps peace in the home and maybe even in the workplace.
So knowing we can't everybody take the assessment, are there some clues that when I've met someone or when I'm sitting down to work with them, are there some clues that I can pick up on and I go, oh, okay, I need to make sure that I respond or react this way, or I give instructions this way, or that I'm more patient, or that I use them to my advantage because they're different from me?
So in the Myers-Briggs world, there's an ethical standard that we're held to that we do not put someone else in a box. It's a self-assessment. So when they take the assessment and you get your report, then you look at what your best fit type is. You get to determine, is this me or is this not me? And we do work together when I'm working with a certified practitioner that helps them come to an answer. But just in the general space, yes, there are clues. So I'm going to use, as an example, the one pair of opposites that causes the most conflict in the workplace. And that's that last pair of opposites, which is the JP dichotomy, judging or perceiving. Now you can imagine, because most of it is based in time, That's why. So you've got the person who has a preference for judging and the person who has a preference for perceiving. So here's an example. You're working on a project and you and I have a part, and I believe you and I are different in that dichotomy.
Okay.
So we have the project, we receive it. Okay, here are the things that need to happen. This is the end goal.
Okay.
And you're going to look at doing things succinctly. I may start doing them all over the place. They're both going to get done, but I look at it differently because I see everything at once. So understanding that it's both right is what's important.
Oh my God, I could ask you about so many other examples. I know we're coming up to the end of the show. So how do people work with you on this? I mean, do they come to you and say, hey, I want the assessment? Do they come to you and say, I'm not getting along with somebody, and you figure out what needs to be done? So how do people work with you and learn about you?
So all of those things have happened,
Okay.
but I always direct people to the assessment first. So they can come to me, I'll give them the instructions on how to do it. And again, because I want to make sure that the assessment truly represents who they are, I want them to do it in an environment that I give them the instructions on how to do it. Because it's called shoes off mode, without roles, without expectations.
Okay.
And they can reach me on my website, Valerie.com.
All right. And there's no E at the end of that.
There's
Valerie.
no E's in it anywhere. And I still have people at my ripe age that ask me, are you sure?
Right. Are you sure about your own
Oh,
name?
the spelling of my name. I've had that pretty much nailed
Too
since about
funny.
age 3. So,
Too funny. So ending words of wisdom relating to behavioral styles or personality types or...
again, I always say to give yourself some grace. Get to know who you are first and understand that we're designed with a purpose and people are who they're supposed to be. So anything you can do to bridge that gap, give you a common language to understand better, is time well spent and invested.
Awesome. Valerie, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping viewers answer the question, how do we just get along? Because we got out of practice with a lot of this. And what we learned on Zoom or whatever it was we were using during the pandemic, just while it may be true somewhat, we're now back in person dealing with folks. So I want to thank viewers. I appreciate you spending your time on watching the show today. And as I usually do, I invite you to tune in next time. Tune in, take what you see and hear, and, well, think about it. And I want you to make a great day.